Student Economy.
A class of kids.
Crucial, thought-provoking questions.
And occasionally something serious mixed in.
Featuring the kids of Shref Tech.
And Brad Schreffler.
All right, guys, welcome to, episode 4 of the Student Economy podcast. And we're here with First Period again because they're still a little heated from last time, I feel like. They got on the edge of a conversation, and now they want to continue it on. And who wants to introduce us? Who wants to start us out?
Colton can introduce us today.
Colton?
How you doing, Colton?
Audio engineer, Colton.
Audio engineer.
Oh,
yeah,
here we
very,
go.
very
Now
specific job titles here. We're trying to discuss today whether or not eSports can be considered sports.
Different from last week's topic, which was how big eSports is getting.
Yes. So we have some very split sides here right now. We got me and Perry on the side that we should consider them as eSports. We got Schreffler and Diego and Preston all here. They think, well, Preston's kind of in the middle, but Diego and Schreffler think that eSports are not sports or cannot be considered sports.
Do you guys have opening arguments ready to go? Perry has a whole thing of notes. He's ready to go.
I also have notes.
So what I've heard from Diego all week, kind of leading up to this recording session, because we talked about recording it earlier on in the week, was that the definition of a sport requires physical activity and how that's kind of part of leading into a sport. But overall, I think the term sport has fluctuated and it's got a lot of open loopholes in it because as we future on into the future, we see more and more people grasping onto this thing of esports and how it's actually kind of really good and competitive, and its player base and its watch base is super large. I mean, ESPN considers it a sport, and it's ESPN literally stands for the Entertainment Sports Network.
Okay, well, if we're going off of ESPN, you're venturing into a dark hole that you're going to have a hard time defending. I assure you, ESPN airs a lot of stuff that isn't sports.
That you consider
like
not
the
sports.
poker tournament and the chess tournament and stuff like that.
Or like
don't really have
strongman competitions activity. Or the problem is you have to. So here's where I come from. Is that saying that something isn't a sport doesn't mean that I'm insulting it. I'm not insulting esports in any way by saying they are not a sport.
Okay.
You're assuming that's what I'm doing, but that's not it. I'm just saying that it's not a sport. And I think sports are pretty specific. They're a specific set of things. Number one, and I should say for the record, I've spent way too much time talking about this with my friends, long before esports were even in the discussion. But number one, a sport has to have objective scoring. So it cannot subjectively determine wins and losses, right? So if we have a judge or an arbitrator determining who won or lost, it's not a sport.
Okay, so esports qualifies in that.
So far so good.
Okay.
Right? But see, here's where people get upset when I have this conversation is by saying that, I'm saying things like gymnastics and dancing and figure skating.
Oh, so like
those aren't sports.
Band and marching. Oh, I understand.
Right? So people get a little heated, especially on the gymnastics front. They're like, oh, that's a sport. I'm like, listen. But so again, I point that out because that's not an insult to say it's not a sport. I cannot be a gymnast or a cheerleader or any of those things. I don't have the physical skills. And those people are amazing athletes. That doesn't mean they play a sport. Right?
Yeah.
So Diego, I'm going to let you were in the middle of helping a student, but I want to hear your discussion a little bit.
Yeah, Schreffler's side right here. When people ask you as a young boy, what sport do you play? What would you say? Baseball, soccer? What would you say?
I would say that I've played
League of Legends.
League of Legends.
I would say
lovely. You said League of Legends. You say you go home, you sit down in the chair, and you play on your little laptop or whatever it is. I don't know because I don't do that stuff. But tell me, what is it? A computer, a laptop? What is it?
I mean, I go home, and if I was to tell somebody, I'd tell them that I played baseball for 13 years.
Okay, baseball. That is a sport.
I'd say that I played baseball for 13 years, and then I'm actually number 26 in the world of StarCraft 2, and I play StarCraft 2 competitively. So,
you're number 2 in the United States, right?
I'm number 2 in the United States.
That's awesome. Congratulations. But is that a sport? Would you, when people ask you, what sport do you play, what would you say? Baseball, right?
I would say I play StarCraft 2.
StarCraft 2. They
Do you
look at
really though?
like
But do you really though? Like that's the thing. So, I get what you're saying. It's extremely competitive, and I understand that it is tremendously impressive the time and effort and dedication you put into it. I'm not belittling or simplifying that in any way. I just don't think that in the lexicon of our culture, we don't look as a whole. We don't look at gaming as a sport,
And that's where
video games are not a sport.
But that's where it's misinterpreted.
But I think if you assume that's an insult, then it's misinterpreted. I don't mean that as an
you're
insult.
taking it to heart because you put so much time into it. You get butthurt when you say it's not a sport. Let's just face reality. Do you or do you not?
Well, I could argue the same thing that you're being butthurt that we are trying to say that it's a sport, though, based on
Yeah.
our actions of the past week.
That's
Okay.
fair.
All right, it's fair.
It's a personal discussion. It's very personal to ourselves.
Why do you not see it as a sport?
The definition of a sport. Let me look it up. Because
An activity involving physical exertion and skill, that's an important one, with an individual that a team competes against another for entertainment.
the first
For entertainment
first couple of words
purposes.
you just said takes esports out of the picture. Physical exertion.
Physical
What
exertion.
physical
Here's the
exertion?
definition of physical exertion.
Oh God!
Also true.
Movement of the body that uses energy.
You're using your fingers.
Oh my God.
You're using your fingers to move.
fingers
your-
and mouse.
Diego, the point is that what physical exertion doesn't mean that it's an intense exertion. I'm physically exerting myself by speaking. I'm physically
Oh, yeah,
exerting
sure,
by
yeah.
literally moving my hands while I talk. But my mouth moving alone is physical exertion, technically. So on a technicality of that broad definition of sports, then yes, that is a sport. But so is podcasting.
This is a sport.
So
I guess we're all
is
great at this sport.
selling something. By that definition, so is selling cell phones or selling cars. Like, by that definition,
A normal
But
job
no
is a sport.
team is competing against another team.
that
for
doesn't
entertainment.
require a team. It says an individual or a team, right?
Individual or team competes in. Okay, I guess.
So as an individual at a car dealership, I'm
sport.
competing against the other salespeople to get the sales I need, to get the bonuses I want. So that's sport.
Do you have anything else to say?
that is true. Okay, you're right there. But
So my point is that definition is far too broad to be what we base this off of.
But I mean, that's just kind of how the sports definition has gotten over the years. Because there's no real line, in my opinion, of a sport other than that line of, like, car sales.
We all agree that car sales isn't a sport,
I also agree.
but it meets that definition.
That's true. That's why we can't go by the definition. Isn't that correct?
So ultimately,
so Diego's point is
this
we have
entire
to throw that out.
this entire point is subjective. And since the one rule we've already established is that scoring cannot be subjective in a sport,
Right.
arguing about esports as a sport is not a sport.
And you can't say the players don't make money because they make plenty of money.
You can make money off a regular job. Is it a sport?
They make a lot more.
They
than
make
that.
a lot more.
Well, first of all,
I'm aware
again,
that I
we
make-
can argue the same thing. That's like saying I make money playing some people make money playing basketball. That doesn't mean every kid sitting on a court at the gym is making millions of dollars playing basketball. So that's
I
not
agree with
really
you. Just
like that's not. The problem is the argument really isn't about esports being a sport. The problem is that term sport is not definable effectively. It is not definable in a way that everyone is okay with because everyone has their own opinions of what is or isn't a sport. So this is basically as useless of a conversation as asking if water is wet.
But is water wet, though?
What we're really learning is not, I don't think it's about esports. It's about the subjective nature of our beliefs. I know, Perry's dying. He has like 7 pages of notes that I just trashed in one sentence.
So many notes.
But I think the better question is, we live in a society with subjective belief systems, right? We all have our own belief systems about what the world means and what it's for and what we are taking from the world, right? Like we all have our own definition of sports, and Diego is very sure that esports does not count. You guys very much believe it does count. Although I would argue that, again, if someone asks what sport do you play, you don't actually reply StarCraft. Like no one would ever do that.
I mean,
at least in the current system, no one would actually do
In
that.
the current meta, can you please learn your terminology?
It's interesting to think about that sort of subjective nature to the world, right? Like sports are not the only example of this. Right? It's not the only example of something that we don't clearly define, and yet we all have a belief that we know what it means. Do you guys struggle? Do you guys struggle with that subjective nature sometimes? Like, is it hard for you to do you find that we make assumptions about what other people think quite often.
I mean, people judge each other all the time, and that's kind of not really how we should view the world. So
I think it's only going to get worse when you expand to a more, as we shrink the world effectively through the internet and everything else, that problem is only going to get worse because things mean completely different things depending on where you
James
are.
Halliday invents the Oasis, and then we're all good.
No. Well, anything else? Can we go to something else? Something more serious?
Can we talk about water being wet or the earth being round?
Dude, I was actually thinking the same thing.
Why? So this whole, fine, let's talk about meme culture, because let's talk about that.
yes!
Let's talk about meme culture, because I'm like, we're sitting here struggling to come up with topics, and you idiots just have these dumb ideas. Is water wet? Is a circle round? I don't even know.
Are Tide Pods edible?
I don't get it. None of it's funny. It's just, the stupid dull...
Yo, dippers.
There's nothing funny about that.
What I think it is if you look at the definition of meme, this is something I looked up long ago. It's like a joke that's like told with a group of people. So it's kind of like an inside joke. So when people see a meme, they now are a part of that inside joke.
But do you know Dewey?
See?
Do you know Dewey and the devil?
It's all memes. But then the thing is, you're making memes within a meme, within a meme, within a meme, and it's just ridiculous.
Show me Dewey, my queen.
No, I don't.
Show me Dewey.
Eye contact. It's so weird.
I don't get it. I don't understand. That's something I don't get.
Why?
I think Diego's just as lost.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
You don't follow memes at all?
I used to watch
The way
iFunny.
of
He used to watch iFunny.
To like their iPhone.
It's Jesus.
I don't. How do you even? Okay, let me ask this.
We're not sharing memes now.
How do you even keep up with this? They move so fast.
Right.
Like the classic memes, I know some of the I know the classic memes.
Those are dead now.
Those are dead.
I know, and that's the sad part because those are good.
So 2018 rolls in, and then you get the meme of the month. The meme of January was "Do you know Dewey?" And that's going to be the meme. But then we have February rolling in. Nobody knows what the meme of the February is going to be. So it's just kind of
And that's
So
what makes
we
it
look
exciting.
for a dead joke.
But it's
that shouldn't be funny, but it automatically is because it's so
let's look
stupid.
Let's look at the
that it entertains our
2017
little minds.
meme calendar. So,
But it's you.
This is something that exists.
You're intentionally.
you got the little salt guy.
But it's you're doing them on purpose. I think that's my problem with it. I think if I really think about it, that's my issue. Is you're intentionally making something for that purpose, as opposed to classic memes were images that existed non-ironically added with a funny context. There's some sort of.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
The "What If I Told You" meme, that was from an actual movie and then twisted
in December, that was just a screen clip of Kylo Ren with his pants all the way up to his abs.
But that's not a meme. That's just a picture. It's not just funny. That's my point. It's not just
or
funny.
in July, it was that Snapchat filter with the hot dog.
How is that? But how is that's not funny?
The non-ironic pictures with the captions and stuff, they're so cringy now. I find them so cringy.
Oh my god, they're so hilarious. Oh, and then also in November we had EA.
Well, that's but again not a meme. That's just a company.
What about United?
I think that's my issue. Is again, meme is not the right term. Meme meant something, and then we've completely drastically changed what the word means now.
Sport.
Definitely.
Like sports.
Which it's just generally meme.
I don't know. Your culture drives me insane sometimes.
The culture is not insane though.
It is ridiculous. It is
Dude,
absolutely
boss baby, no clickbait.
Wow. That's great.
And on that terrible disappointment.
What do you mean? Fidget spinners were in May, and then you had this meme.
That is so old.
This?
Yes.
What about this?
We were doing that when I was
that one's nice.
the finger. Okay, so for people that aren't listening, because again we're on a radio show, the old you put your fingers together and you try to trick your friends into looking at their stupid finger positions or the round circle and the